Welcome to Unfolding. It's been a crazy week. For those of you who do not follow my Instagram, I've started this challenge called Faithless Christianity, inspired by Brian Guan. And every day, I pretend God is real. I act as if God is real for 30 days to see if it changes my life, see if faith finds me, see if it makes me happier, more fulfilled. And the first video went absolutely nuclear and now has over 350,000 views. I went from 500 followers to over 10,000 followers in 4 days. I've been receiving so many DMs, so much love and support. It's been amazing. I'm so grateful for it, and I want to thank each and every one of you who has been sending me advice, sending me suggestions, reaching out, leaving comments on the videos, following along on the journey. It's so cool to see. So today, I have your questions. To celebrate 10K followers on Instagram, but also 200 followers on the podcast page and 200 subscribers on the YouTube page. Things have been growing and super awesome to see. So I have around 20 questions from all of you, because I know a lot of you guys have come from the challenge, and a lot of you don't even really know much about the podcast, about my newsletter, anything else that I even do, who I am as a person, who's the guy behind this challenge. This massive influx of people that's just come here. That's kind of all you know me for, so that's what we're going to dive into today. The first question isn't even a question. It's just a comment, but it's something I wanted to address right out of the gate. It's from Mr. Cello99. You shouldn't have used the pretending faith topic to gain followers. It's sad. I want to set this clear right away. I did not do that intentionally. I was chatting with Brian, and I was really interested in his journey. I thought the idea of acting as if God was real was a fascinating one. And I was chatting with him, talking about my exploration into Christianity that has been going on for months now. And you can go back to see my newsletters and my podcasts talking about it and everything. And I was chatting with Brian and I was like, hey, if I'm ever in New York, I would love to meet up with you and do a podcast. And I was already curious about the challenge at this point. Brian responds and says, do 30 days of the challenge and I'll do your podcast. And that was like the final straw on the camel's back. And I was like, okay. So I committed to doing 30 days and day one just exploded. I did not engineer it to go viral or anything like that. If I could engineer videos to go viral, I would have been doing that for a long time ago. But yeah, it blew up. And I did start the challenge from a place of genuine curiosity, tipped off by Brian's message there. I did not think, oh, this is a cool idea. I'm going to use this to get this will go viral. I'll use this to get a bunch of people to follow me. I was not expecting it to go anywhere. And it has been crazy to see it explode. So the next question is from Cordy140. Give us the backstory. Who are you? What do you do? I think this is probably a question a ton of people have from finding me through the challenge, because you look at my page and you're like, nothing about faithless Christianity anywhere except that one video, obviously. So I just started the challenge. And this is the perfect segue for me to introduce myself and talk about Unfolding, talk about the fold, talk about Kaizen and the journey I've been on. My name is Zach, 21, and for as long as I can remember, I've wanted to create things. And podcasts changed my life, honestly. Listening to podcasts, soaking up information from them, they were my way of getting access to the people and the knowledge and the tools that were not available to me in my immediate life. And I knew I always wanted more. I knew I always wanted this life that seemed crazy, seemed impossible. Having a job that completely fulfills me, where I'm excited to wake up every day, having a family, having kids, having the financial freedom and the occupational freedom to be guided by my curiosity, and so that every day just feels like play. And with podcasting, I've been getting closer and closer to that state, and it's so exciting to see. I used to be out of shape. I was super insecure. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life and my future. I switched majors like 3 times in university before dropping out about 8 months ago. And now I'm following my internal compass to some degree. I'm talking to the people that I've looked up to and starting to connect with a lot of the people that I've looked up to for such a long time. And I'm asking them the questions that I've never had the chance to ask in the past. And that is so cool to me, that I get to meet people that I've been, watching their content, reading their articles, whatever, for months or years or whatever. And their advice has changed my life. And now I get to ask them directly about stuff that I'm interested in and then share that with the world so that it can help other people. Like, this is the coolest thing ever. That's why I love podcasting. What Enneagram number do you think you are? That's from Jody. So I don't really know much about Enneagram numbers. I've done a bunch of different personality tests. Personality tests are kind of interesting. Most of them I feel like are just kind of astrology for guys. There's like nothing behind them. They're just like vibes. And then they give you like some sort of generic traits that anyone can sort of attach themselves to. Obviously, there are some good ones, like the ocean model is pretty rigorous scientifically. It's not too bad. But I remember taking some sort of personality test a while ago that was like a combination of a bunch of different tests in one. And I think part of it gave me an Enneagram number. And I think it was like 7 or 9. I can't remember, honestly. I don't even know how many Enneagram numbers there are. I think there's 9. I don't remember what they mean. But yeah, I think there is some utility in doing personality tests, even the vibe-based ones, because it can give you like a little bit of self-reflection, a little bit of awareness about who you are and like your inclinations and propensities that you have towards things. But I'm going to add some more wood to the fire here. What led you to podcasting? I kind of already answered this question. Oh, this is from Fliss, by the way. I mostly answered this question. But honestly, I didn't actually start the podcast with the intention of it becoming what it has become today and where it's going to become eventually. Because where I'm at right now is like, I'm all in on the podcast, baby. This is the main thing. And when I started the podcast, it was kind of like a side piece. I was doing my newsletter every week, which I've been doing for like a year and a half now. I was doing talking head videos on Instagram, trying to build a personal brand. And I was doing, basically content writing. And then I started the newsletter as a way to sort of like develop the ideas that I was writing about in my newsletter. So I started the podcast as a way to develop the ideas, just chatting with my dad and my friends and stuff. I didn't start it with the intention of like, I'm going to be the next Modern Wisdom. And that's not where I am right now, because I'm not trying to be Modern Wisdom. I'm trying to be me. But I only started realizing I wanted it to be the main thing and I wanted to go all in on it once I started trying to push the boundary of like, how can I improve this? How can I make this better? And then that's when I started my mentorships. My main one being with Chris Griffin from Pod Pro, and he's been for the podcast specifically, because Benny helps me with more like my other mentor, Benny Ree. He helps me with like content strategy and more broader stuff, but also packaging. Anyways, he helps me with different things, which is great because I get different perspectives from each of them. And Chris and Pod Pro have been fantastic. If you have a podcast and you're trying to take it to the next level, Pod Pro is a fantastic community. There's a saying there, rising tide lifts all boats, and couldn't be more true. Everyone in there is so helpful, and when one person wins, we all win because we all have something unique to say, and podcasting can never be too saturated because there's always a different subset of people that will listen to you and your message and your podcast. And Chris has been great. Everything that he teaches in Pod Pro is liquid gold. And I mean, you can see just how much my podcast has improved and grown since I joined Pod Pro in about May of this year to where I am now. And I don't even know where the future is going with this whole explosion of followers from the faithless Christianity thing. I did not see that coming. I knew that I would grow big. Like, I knew I wasn't going to quit podcasting, and I knew I wasn't going to quit content. So I knew I would eventually get to this size at some point, but it just did not happen in the way I expected whatsoever. And I'm so grateful for it. And it just took me by complete surprise. But next question is Witty Willy Wit. What gave you the motivation to start podcasting about issues surrounding faith if you aren't already a Christian? I understand why Christians do it because they're already invested in it, but what's the draw for you? So I think there's a little bit of an assumption baked into this question that the podcast is about faith. It is not about faith. Unfolding is about basically what I was talking about before, where I sit down with people and ask the questions that I wish I could have asked when I didn't have access to mentors and experiences and the knowledge and the tools that I needed to improve my life in the way that I wanted to improve it. So basically, it's a show about following my own curiosity and running experiments in my own life. And the faithless Christianity thing is just the latest experiment. It's a live thread at the moment, and it's very personal to me, obviously. Like, spirituality is a very personal journey, and faith and religion and all of that. It's a very vulnerable thing to just be sharing with the world. But that's how I've always led my content, my writing, the podcast, is like, what interests me, what's real to me, what's authentic. And it's not the easiest thing, obviously, being super vulnerable and open with everyone, but it's the only way I'd want to do it because it's true and it's honest and it's something I can actually put myself behind or put myself in front of 100% without worrying about if I can fall asleep at night. So the podcast isn't about faith and Christianity specifically. That's just sort of a live thread at the moment, so it's come up in conversations, and some of the guests, like I had a Christian theologian on recently, stuff like that. But topics naturally evolve, like modern wisdom. Chris talks about different stuff with different sorts of people. If you go back to like a year ago, he's talking about different types of things than he is now. So sure, there's large arcs that stay relatively similar and all that, but it ebbs and flows. What is your religious background before atheism? So I don't actually have any religious background before atheism. I grew up atheist or non-anything. I don't know. Secular. My parents never really forced me into anything or forced me against anything. They never told me Christianity was wrong or evil or anything, or they never told me religion itself was bad. They were just not religious, and that's just how I was raised. Never been to church, never prayed before this challenge, never did a bunch of stuff. Haven't believed in God. Still sort of agnostic, but as I'll get into later, I'm sort of at the point where I feel like I have to believe in something, but I just don't know what it is. So I'm exploring different things. So nothing came before atheism. Basically been atheist all my life. And of course I had an edgy atheist phase, and then I went back into agnosticism and stuff. I feel like everyone kind of goes through that, but were you raised in organized religion? And if so, what made you walk away from that faith? Not raised in any sort of organized religion at all. And yeah, the edgy atheist phase was when I was deep into first discovering science and philosophy and everything. Probably in my teenage years when I was 11 or 12 or something. And yeah, that was basically when I thought God was stupid and religion was stupid, and all these people who believe in this is just a bunch of magical nonsense. They're just a bunch of idiots who need to pick up a science textbook and turn their brains on. And that was obviously a very arrogant way of looking at the world. And I do not look back on myself in that time very fondly, obviously. I can understand why I thought that at the time. But yeah, quite more open now. That atheism softened into agnosticism, and then that agnosticism opened up into spiritual curiosity. And then now I'm sort of, I don't even know if I would say I'm seeking Christianity. I'm just exploring it. doing this challenge, I'm trying it out, but like I'm genuinely, I have no idea where it's going to go in terms of, yeah, like if I have an experience or something like that, or I'm a very skeptical and logical person. So like it takes a lot for me to fully believe in something and to change my beliefs. I do change beliefs sometimes. There's been a few times where I've shifted beliefs on things over the years, but it does not happen very often, and it takes a lot for me to change my mind. Next question. Now we're getting into the bulk of the faith questions, which of course most of you came from the Faithless Christianity Challenge. That's what you're most curious about, of course. Ask ChatGPT, according to the New Testament, how to live a righteous, holy life. I do not have ChatGPT. I am a Claude supremacist, so I'm going to ask Claude, hey Claude, how do I live a righteous life according to the New Testament? See what he says. Righteousness isn't primarily about rule following. It centers on a few core threads. Love as a fulfillment of law, faith, not earned merit, concrete ethical marks, forgiveness, and self-examination. That seems to be what I'm gathering so far with this challenge. Because part of what has piqued my curiosity with Christianity in the first place over other religions is, one, its influence in Western society in terms of Christian values and beliefs, and also the sort of like the realization as I got into philosophy and spirituality that it's like, it's a little more plausible than I had initially thought. Obviously, when you're looking at it from a completely secular and atheist lens, it's easy to take the assumption and the viewpoint that it's like totally silly. Because that's all you've known. So like looking at it from the outside looks crazy. But when you actually like give it some weight, take it a little more seriously, and treat it with a bit more respect, you can definitely see like how pieces of it fit together. And that's where I'm starting to get to, I think. But I think faith's just one of those things you can't force. You can't like make it happen. I'm actually writing an essay about this right now. But I think it's one of those things that like slowly trickles through you over time. Do you have expectations? This is from Karim Koka. I'm probably not saying any of these right, but that's fine. I'm assuming this is about the challenge. Not really. As I said, I entered it through complete like open curiosity, and I really don't know like what's going to happen. I would assume if I were to have any expectations, it's like, I think the Christian set of beliefs and systems, especially like a lot of the daily acts within Brian's challenge, he's put out like prayer and gratitude and applying Jesus' teachings and stuff. Those are kind of like a recipe for being a better person, whether you believe in God or not. Like I've been practicing gratitude for a long time, and it's undoubtedly improved my mood and happiness and just like my default outlook on life. And I'm sure like prayer and like doing what Jesus would do, it was just essentially like applying his teachings, would have a similar effect. So that's probably the one expectation I would have. But generally, like, I try and go into things with less and less expectation. The more I just like live and the older I get, I'm like, expectations usually don't help you out in most scenarios. And Kareem Coco also added a comment, stay humble no matter the number. And yeah, just to touch on that, like the 10K is kind of weird. It's like a crazy, like surreal feeling because it all happened like at once in 4 days, like 10,000 people. And not only that, like in the last 30 days, almost 1 million people have seen my face and like combined views across videos and stuff, which is absurd. That's like wild to me. And the 10,000 followers thing, like, I think I don't really have a problem with the humility of it because I'm not attached to the number. I'm attached to the impact. And what drives it for me is being able to help people and being able to make an impact in other people's lives. And yeah, that is like quote unquote better the more people I can help and the more people I can impact, which is represented in like views and followers and stuff. But I know that like 10,000 followers doesn't make me a better person, obviously. It does give you some sort of leverage in certain things, like you get a little bit more street cred sort of, but honestly, like the crazy thing is like it's blown up so crazily and so insanely, and it's been like 4 days, and there's a part of me that's a little numb to it already, which is nuts. I guess it just really really rings home that like external things, when you think about it in terms of the numbers, like obviously 10,000 people, that's 10,000 actual human beings. When you frame it in that way, it's like, okay, that's crazy. I'm so grateful and all of that. But then when you just think about like, oh, I have this big number on my thing and it's just like this cool thing I get to show off, like that aspect of it means nothing to me. It's the people I care about. Boss Gover, are you concerned that maybe bias/suggestion could influence your 30 Days of Christian challenge? This is a really good question, and it's one that I already asked myself on day 3, I think. And I also wrote an issue about it in my newsletter because on a recent episode of the podcast with Chris Robertson, Caffeine and Philosophy, he said, he was talking about psychedelic experiences and religious experiences people have, and then they sort of use that as a belief for truth. And he basically posed the question, sort of like a rhetorical question. And he said, is the feeling of profundity the same as truth? In which the answer is kind of obviously no. Just because something is profound and makes you awestruck does not mean that it's automatically true. So shifting your beliefs based on that sole profound experience is not a great way to form a belief system. But I feel like that's something that you can only really know after you've had the experience. Like, if I had some sort of experience, how would I know it's true? That's a question I ask myself. How do I know that I haven't just primed myself to perceive that experience as talking to Christian God or Jesus or whatever? I don't know. Maybe if I was doing a different challenge and I was trying Islam for 30 days and I had an experience doing that, in that scenario, maybe I had primed my mind to see that experience as me talking to Allah. I have no idea. It's a hard one to answer, and I think the hardest part of it is that you can't really know until you've been through the experience whether you can perceive it as true or not. And the skepticism doesn't really help you on either side of the equation. So, I don't know. I have thought about it. Urban 18692 Picaroo asks, how do you know if the belief becomes real? I think placebo is what happened with the other guy. I'm not going to speak on Brian's experience. He'll be able to tell. I mean, he broke down crying. I feel like that's pretty... I'm sure he feels it was real. If you think that it was a placebo for him, you're free to believe that, but I would take that up with Brian. I think he'd probably disagree with you. This ties back to the last question in a similar tone, which is basically a question of truth and faith in a sense, but mostly truth. Like, how would you know that the experience you have, if you do have a profound experience or some sort of shift in internal state, how do you know that's pointing you at truth and not just like some feeling? And that's a difficult question. That's like one of the questions, is like, what is truth? I mean, that's part of what drew me to Christianity and theology as a whole, is because like science is not really good at answering the what is when you point it at a high enough level. So like, for example, you can like, what makes something beautiful? Science can answer that question. It's like, okay, certain types of shapes and colors and patterns and whatever, like, create sensory experiences in our brain and blah, 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 gives us happy chemicals of dopamine. But what is beauty? That is a theological question. What is love? What is truth? These are not scientific questions, and they cannot be answered scientifically. What is right? What is wrong? For the longest time, I was an emotivist because I couldn't believe that the feeling of something being right or the feeling of something being wrong was just scientifically deductible, because there's no truth to the statement murder is wrong. It's just like a feeling. You just feel that it's wrong, and you can't explain it in any other way. But the issue with that is that there has to be some like standard of morality, and I've always believed in objective truth. And squaring that with spirituality in some sense kind of leads you to theology, where it's like, okay, well, if there is an objective truth, then there's probably an objective right and an objective love and whatever. And like, you know, if you go fully into it, you'd be like, that's God, infinite love, infinite truth, the sense of right and wrong and all that, at least based on my current understanding. So yeah, those are like the tough questions. And that was part of what drew me to religion and spirituality, is like, at least they have an answer. Next question is from Eric Warden. Why do you struggle with the resurrection of Christ? I think it ties back to my materialist and scientific biases, I guess if you want to call them that. But it's just like, most of my experiences come from that place. So of course I'm going to naturally think in that way. Very logical, very analytical, very skeptical of things that seem impossible. And the resurrection of Christ seems impossible. It goes against everything that I've ever known. Guy rising from the dead. It's magic. Which I would say I'm like magically agnostic now. But I don't know is probably the best answer. And even like some of the most, not hardcore anymore, but like some of the most prominent atheists, like Alex O'Connor, have to admit, okay, yes, a bunch of the disciples died for, like, or went to jail and stuff for saying that Jesus rose from the dead. That's definitely not nothing. But also, based on all the current, like, historical evidence we have, there was a clip where Alex O'Connor basically said there was at least something weird. And it's like, okay, wait. You're telling me you're the most science atheist guy who's, like, very skeptical, studied tons of theology, and you're saying all we know is that something weird happened? Like, that's at least suspicious. So that's interesting to me. So I don't know. I don't know is probably the best answer to that. I struggle to just believe in it. And with a lot of things around Christ. I mean, honestly, like all the miracles that he performed and stuff. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a question of faith in some sense. It's like, I didn't see it. I can't believe it. I've never seen anything like that. So it's hard to believe in it. But yeah, that's like one of my... That and the problem of evil are like the two biggest issues I have with Christianity at the moment. Malin Sund. If God is real, what do you think he thinks of you? This is a really good question. The thing that makes the most sense to me is something that Peter Chi said on my podcast recently. He's a Christian theologian. He studied theology, primarily like first century stuff. But he basically said God respects truth, And even if you're an atheist, even if you're agnostic, he respects those who are in pursuit of the truth and those who seek truth. And that makes the most sense to me if you look at the frame of God being infinite truth. If God is infinite truth and infinite love, then it would make sense he would respect the people who pursue truth and pursue love. And one of the things that has pretty much always guided me throughout my life is truth. I would say it's probably my highest value in terms of like hierarchy of values. Truth would be number one. Because I think love's up there, it's maybe 2 or 3, but the issue is you can't put love first, because if you put love before truth, you can hurt people. Because it could be false compassion or toxic empathy, where it's done from a place of love, but it's diluted because it doesn't have the truth. So truth needs to be number one, and love is still important. As I said, like probably number 2, maybe top 3. I'm not sure what the third most important value would be, but truth's definitely number 1. So the answer to the question a little more specifically, what do I think God thinks of me if he's real? I think if he's real, he could see my heart, and he could see that I'm oriented towards truth and love, and I'm open to figuring things out, and I'm trying to learn as best I can about different things. And I think if he's real and he's guiding me, then it's probably fine. And I can keep pursuing truth, and probably don't need to worry about it too much. Metamorphosis 583 asks, would you like to know why God allows suffering from a believer's perspective? So this was probably mostly related to one of my videos where I was talking about how the problem of evil and suffering is one of my major blockages for like fully diving into Christianity. I appreciate the offer. I've had like a good number of people try to explain it to me. I know there's the free will argument. There's a few other different arguments as to why suffering makes sense. You know, if God is all powerful and all loving, how can there be evil in the world? How can there be suffering in the world? The thing is like, I understand the arguments, and I kind of agree, like, they could be plausible in most cases. I do think personal suffering is necessary to a degree for most people, because that's where you get your source of growth, and that's where the bad times give the good times the meaning. The issue I have is with unnecessary suffering, especially like suffering of innocence, suffering of innocent animals. I mean, nature is very cruel, but not even to touch on animals and animal suffering, just like humans, like kids that get cancer. What in the world is a kid with cancer doing to deserve that fate? And if you want to say, oh, well, the kid's going to go to heaven, so it's okay. I've heard that argument. That makes no sense, because if the kid's going to go to heaven, then why wouldn't you try to give as many kids cancer as possible? Like, that seems backwards to me. And obviously that's not wrong. That's not right. Like, a kid dying of cancer is wrong. And if God is all loving and all powerful, why would he do that? That's one of my struggles with it. And I know, like, a classic rebuttal to this is just like, well, God's all powerful, God's all knowing. We can't know because he is beyond our understanding. And it's like, yeah, I can see that, and that would be the only way I would be able to reconcile it. But I just can't call, like, kids getting cancer necessary, dude. I just can't do it. And it kind of seems like a cop-out to me. which might piss a lot of you off, but it's true. Chris DH, except the I is a 1, asks, if Jesus and the Bible is real, do you really want to follow Jesus too, or just a test? I think the wording is a little confusing on this one. I'm pretty sure what he's trying to ask here is, if Jesus and the Bible are real, would I actually want to step into the faith, or am I just doing this experiment to see what happens? I guess I've sort of answered this question in a way, but it's kind of like, it goes back to that thing of like, how would I know an experience is real or true, or the mindset shift within me is real or true? That's part of the challenge, is like, how do I distinguish a sense of profoundness with truth? So, I mean, yeah, if I was somehow convinced without a shadow of a doubt that Jesus was real, yeah, I would follow him. But I don't, from where I am right now, I'm not sure. So yeah, I guess it's kind of a test right now. It's just like, it's an open experiment, literally an open experiment. Spencer C727, have you felt a quantifiable change in the amount of blessing life gives you since starting? I mean, 10,000 followers is one. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, kind of. The growth from that has been insane. But I've definitely noticed more peace, that's for sure. But again, like, is that from God or Jesus, or is that just from me doing the things that I'm doing, acting as if God is real? Like, maybe, I think part of the challenge, and like part of the way it could go out, is like, maybe I never get the faith, maybe I never find God or anything, but my life just gets better by pretending that God is real. And in that case, yeah, I'd probably still keep doing all the things, and I guess I'd just sort of be a full-on cultural Christian, which is a possible outcome. But I've definitely noticed improvements. Peace, presence, love, and just like an internal state of calmness. But again, it's hard to say where that's coming from, whether it's through just doing the things or something else. Mrs. Zitha? No question, just praying God reveals himself to you. And there was another one that was like, excited to see what God has planned for you. And I've also gotten like tons and tons of DMs saying like, love the challenge, hoping God reveals himself to you, love the challenge, sending you prayers. And I just wanted to use this as a moment to thank you for all the support, even though, even if I don't fully believe in God, I appreciate the sentiment of you guys sending me prayers and wishing the best for me. And I know although some of the people trying to give me advice and suggestions, it's been quite overwhelming, and a lot of people are saying very similar things. I know it's all coming from a good place. And that's what I appreciate the most. Is like, I know you guys are just trying to spread love, and that has been great. That's probably been like the best part of getting all these crazy responses, even though it's been like so much to get to respond to, and I haven't been able to respond to everybody, which eats at me a little bit. I wish I could. I wish I had the time to, but it's like literally like I can't. There's too many. So thank you so much. Do you trust yourself in knowing what is right and wrong? This is from Gran Nolson. Hopefully I'm saying your name right. This is an interesting one. Because it ties into the piece around morality and also perhaps truth. If that's the kind of the meaning they're talking about. I think I do. The thing is like, where do I get that sense of right and wrong? Where do I get that morality? Because I feel like I've always had this assumption of like, yeah, do unto others as I'd have them do unto me, and treat people with respect, speak the truth, be compassionate, all this stuff. And it's like, okay, but where does that come from? Right? Like, that's just not like baked into evolution. I mean, evolution is ruthless. It's survival of the fittest. The best way to survive is to do what's best for you. So where does this moral framework of things just feeling right and feeling wrong come from? It's a good question. Does it come from God? I don't know. Perhaps. So I guess the answer is yes, but where does that sense of right and wrong come from? I don't know. So another question from Fliss. Have you had a moment in your life which was a big adversity, and how did you navigate it? I would say there's a big one. That's probably the biggest one in my life. And then there's a more recent one that was difficult in a different way. I'll start with that one because I've already kind of opened the door to that, which was basically me dropping out of university. That was a rough conversation to have with my parents. Not so much with my mom. She was quite understanding, but definitely my dad. It was harder for him to come to terms with. And I still feel like there might be a piece of him that's hoping I go back and just finish my degree for the sake of it. It's a funny thing because, I mean, you know, I was always told I was a smart kid and all this stuff, and I did get good grades. I mean, I was studying math. I was studying computer science, and then I switched to math. But, and I was on track to get honors and stuff, but that's besides the point now. Why did I drop out? Because it was empty. I asked myself, why am I here? And I didn't have a good answer to the question. And that immediately told me that I was wasting my time because I was getting a piece of paper that I didn't know why I wanted for a job that I knew I didn't want, or a career path of jobs that I knew I wasn't going to pursue because this is what I want to do, is content podcasting. Something where it's harder, but charting my own path is much more fulfilling to me. And so I asked myself, I was like, why am I here? And the only good answer I had to that was because I was expected to be. Everyone from when I was growing up was just like, so which school are you going to? Not, are you going to school? Not which pathway are you looking at? Not, are you looking into mentorship? Or are you looking into trades or any sort of thing like that? No, it's like, it was like a pre-baked assumption that I was going to university. So that was a bit of a rough spot, but I think my parents have come to terms with that. And, you know, I'm only 21, so like worst case scenario, I can go back to school, but I'm not going to. I don't see that happening. And the biggest adversity, I'll answer this one, was when my parents split up. When I was 11, my parents, I mean, you know, it was a downward descent towards this point. It's not like it came out of nowhere. I wasn't surprised when it happened. At the moment that it happened, like it led up to that point. Things got bad, and yeah, my parents divorced or separated when I was 11, so it was 10 years ago now. And that was, yeah, probably the roughest period of my life for a variety of reasons. Just like confusion, anger at my dad, not understanding why he had done some of the things that he had done. And there was a large period of my life where I went to therapy with my parents and then also alone. And I think that was helpful to the degree that it gave me a level of self-reflection that most people that age do not have. And it also gave me the tools to be able to talk about my own emotions and to witness other people's emotions and behavior in a way that most 11-year-olds also do not have. So looking back at that period, kind of connecting to the suffering piece, like personal suffering in a way, it was the roughest time of my life, but I'm grateful for it because it has brought me to where I am now. I would not have the level of emotional intelligence and self-awareness and self-reflection that I have now without that period of my life and that turmoil. And definitely part of the reason why people call me an old soul and say, oh, you're so wise for your age and you ask all these questions and you're a deep thinker and all this stuff. Can't believe you're 21. Is probably in large part attributable to the fact that I had to figure it out when I was 11. It was a survival mechanism at that point. I needed the tools to be able to talk about this type of stuff because I needed to make sense of what the hell was going on with my life. So that was probably, one of the biggest things that I've ever been through. And that was how I navigated it. And it's brought me to here. Now, to close us out for today, we have probably saved the best question for last. This is an absolute doozy from Kel Peak. What is the one question you're scared to ask yourself? The thing that immediately pops into my mind is, this isn't my question, but this is leading to my question. The moment when I had Andrew Briggs on my podcast, and this is similar to the last question I asked him. It's similar to how he took it, at least. The question I asked him was, what's a question that you've never been asked that you wish someone had asked you? Like a roundabout way of getting like a unique response out of somebody. And Andrew paused and his tears welled up in his eyes. And he said, am I sure I'll ever be a dad? And he talked about how he's terrified that, he's 32, 33 or something. I can't remember. He looks like he's in his late 20s. But anyways, he's in his early 30s. And he's talking about how he's older than his mom was when she had him. And he's terrified he's not going to be a dad. And he wants to be a dad so badly. And he talks about this vision he had of seeing his son and just like viscerally remembering that because he just instantly started sobbing. That's what I immediately think of, because I think for me, I want to start a family. I want to have kids. But for me, the question is that I'm scared to ask myself is, am I sure I'll find love? Am I sure I'll find my wife? Because I'm not. 21. Never had a girlfriend. Never even kissed a girl. And, I mentioned the insecurity at the beginning. And that fueled me for a long time because throughout most of all of middle school and high school and university even, every girl that I had ever asked out rejected me or wanted to just be friends or, whatever. And that took a toll on me. And it's left something inside of me that I don't think is still fully healed yet. I've worked on it a lot and it's way better than it was. And I've been on dates now and stuff. But the funny thing now is like, I've worked on myself so much that I feel like my internal sense of self in terms of like romantic security, because I'm not insecure in like any other area of life really. My romantic security hasn't like caught up to like where I'm actually at in real life. Yeah, it's hard, man. I guess in a funny roundabout way to close this out, I have faith that I will find someone at some point. But obviously I'd rather meet somebody and start a family sooner rather than later because I would get more time with them. get more time with my wife, get more time with my kids. And time is all we have. But if I were scared to ask myself one question, that would be it. Well, thank you so much for watching. Thanks for making it to the end. That's how I know you're a real one. I really appreciate it. I hope you learned a bit about me and my journey and where faithless Christianity fits into my life and unfolding and everything I'm doing here. I appreciate you. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. If you enjoyed the intimate style of this solo episode, then I know you're going to love the last solo I did, which is where I really talked about going all in on the podcast and dove into quitting my job and dropping out of university a little bit more.